Linda Goodman's Love Signs. Narrated by Libra Empress. Aries versus Aries relationship. Aries is fire cardinal positive. Ruled by Mars, the symbol of Aries is the ram. The day forces is masculine. The Aries-Aries relationship. I wonder, is it proper and dignified for an Aries person like myself to analyze the one-on-one sun sign vibrational influence between two rams, to describe what it's like when they blend their compatible but equally combustible natures? As neighbors, friends, relatives, business associates, lovers, or mates, let me consider it for a moment. Alright, I've considered it. Of course it's proper. Who's better qualified? No one. As for being dignified, receiving a Dignity Achievement Award has never been my chief goal in life. That settles that. So, let's get on with it. I can't stand waiting around for things to happen, can you? First, we should probably discuss the number of mistakes it's possible for two rams to make in a close association. Gigantic. Simply gigantic. Still, the number of successes can also be overwhelming, and since rams are so frequently compelled to impulsively jump into puddles head first, Aries always quaintly compelled to Aries always leads with the head. It won't be so lonesome being stuck upside down in the mud with a kindred soul for company. When these two strong egos first mix their personal auras, clear the field, and count down for a blast-off, which is usually a surge of spontaneous empathy, it's really such a joy to discover a positive, enthusiastic, and open personality after being stuck with all those squeamish squares and boring wet blankets, the secretive, stingy ones, and especially those cold, unapproachable people who freeze you. When all you're trying to do is be friendly, no wonder there's such an instant rush of mutual admiration. Each ram will find it a blessing relief that the other one isn't all stuffy about things like extravagance, impulsive behavior, rash speech, and being late for appointments. Not only that, now there's someone who will go on to that dentist with them and not think they're a sissy. Most Arians hate two things equally: A, going to the dentist, and B, having someone take their picture candidly or otherwise, sitting still and posing while the photographer adjusts the lights in the studio. It's almost as bad as submitting to a molar tooth extraction or root canal work, because it gives you all that time to decide that you're ugly, which is equally as grinding a pain to the self-conscious rams, who are ultra-concerned and somewhat vain about how they look. Astrologically, Aries rules the physical appearance. The ram's fear of the dentist is in no way, however, a reflection on Aries' courage. Mars supplies these people with all the courage they need, an extra helping of it. Sometimes they ask, even on very short notice. Their dread of the dental drill is an isolated hang-up and mustn't be construed to mean that rams are cowards. They simply don't like anyone messing around with their heads. That normally includes drugs. It definitely includes eyes, ears, nose, and mouth. Also the brain, which means don't mess with their opinions either. Most Aries females, for instance, dislike going to the beauty parlors. Beauticians are so bossy, and they simply will not comb their hair the way that you tell them, or part it where you order them to part it. After all, it's not their hair, it's your hair, but give them an inch and they'll simply snip off 4. The Aries woman may impulsively, to her later regret, cut her own hair drastically too short or crooked, but let someone else turn her into a shorn lamb, and she'll be furious as she'd be with herself. Aries is not at all selective about anger. Girl rams would rather go to the extra trouble to washing their hair at home than suffer a hairstylist who thinks he or she owns their heads. The Aries sensitivity related to anything connected with the head area is really pronounced. You'd be sensitive about your head too. If you had a dozen or so scars scattered around on your head and face that you began collecting in childhood from crashing into things and people head first. As for the extra trouble of doing something themselves, that's no large thing. Rams almost never mind going the extra trouble for themselves or for others. When it's for others, the extra trouble stems from the generous impulse of Mars ruled souls to more give more than may needed of their time, money, and love, loyalty, and everything else. When it comes to themselves, they tend to bring on the extra trouble by creating problems where none would exist if the situation were left alone. Leaving well enough alone seems like a silly advice to give a ram. Why should anyone be satisfied with well enough? What kind of a goal is that when, with a little effort, well enough can be made better? Aries never theorizes that well enough might possibly be made worse. Unless one or both rams have a Capricorn, Taurus, or Cancer moon sign or ascendant, it will probably be easy for them to borrow money from each other, and neither will be likely to create a fuss about being paid back promptly, which is another area of empathy between them. These two are straightforward about everything, including money. It never occurs to them to be deceptive. Actually, they don't know how. Now and then, they may overestimate their ability to pay or even forget a debt. Because of being caught up in something new that's so exciting, it consumes their entire attention. But they are not dishonest or absolutely never sneaky. Nothing both hurts and angers a ram more than to be unjustly mistrusted or suspected. It would mortify the typical Aries man or woman to let anyone down. Anyone whom either gave his word, and this includes creditors. Aries may be either forgetful or delinquent, but eventually they'll pay everything they owe in full, often more than they owe, because rams are not unduly suspicious or cautious about spending, so it's easy for them to be oversold and overcharged. No matter, the Mars idea about money is that when it disappears, more will soon manifest in one way or another. Does the infant fret and worry about where the next dry diaper or bottle of milk will come from? Certainly not. It will magically appear when needed. Everybody knows that. Each Aries person in this one-on-one sun sign pattern associates with will be touchingly grateful for the trust of the other. Not only will two rams usually instinctively trust one another, they won't take advantage of one another, and considering the way the rest of the world usually treats both of them, this can be a warm and wonderful feeling. It's all merry-go-round of happiness between Aries and Aries in the beginning, but after the pink cotton candy melts, there may be a moment of disillusion. You know, that happens. Sorry. You know that happens when fire meets fire, higher and hotter flames. That should indicate the possible ramifications of an association between two wild and woolly rams. Whether it's business, romantic, friendly, or otherwise, it could be otherwise. If they insist on butting away at the impossible task of trying to break each other's vulnerable yet indomitable and unconquerable spirits. Scattered among the more typical extroverted Arians are the not as common sheep-type Aries people, whose Mars egos have been, sadly, crushed in childhood, and who therefore control their natural exuberance behind a most unnatural introversion. If the two Aries people who are involved with one another belong to this group, they may appear on the surface to be capable of arousing anger in each other, but appearances are deceptive. At some time, in some way, their horns are sure to lock. When Mars clashes with Mars, the result can be full-scale war with all flags flapping bravely and colorfully. Occasionally, flare-ups are bound to occur when these two are thrown into close daily proximity without the relief of some separateness in their association. But there will also be some glorious highs to offset these lows. Most of the time, the direct, forceful manner of Mars will create a wave of sympathy between two Aries people. It's when their mutual need for ego trips overlaps that they can expect the fireworks. Here's a possible solution to that problem. One ram is permitted to have everything his way on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. The other ram gets to be big boss on Sundays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays. Saturdays they can just fight it out, letting the ram with the toughest horns win, and bind up the loser's wounds with typical Aries instant contriteness and warm generosity. It's a formula that should be successful in most cases, since neither Aries will mind taking a periodic fling at playing second glockenspiel, knowing that he or she will be allowed to be conductor again the next day. It's been said that Aries people have a way about them. They do, their own way. Yet, despite that sometimes antagonistic Martian exterior, they'll sense each other's desperate need to be appreciated and liked. When they get together, they may struggle for leadership, but the experience will supply some well needed lessons. The shock of living with someone or being around someone as innocently thoughtless, selfish, and aggressive as oneself is sure to soften any battering ram. Although there may be a few scars to show for the lessons in living thus mastered, Aries hearts always carry more scars than the rams ever show or openly discuss. It will be necessary for both of them to realize that Aries is the infant of the zodiac, symbolizing the dawn of the personality awareness, or sunrise. Aries represents the east, the day forces, which is why most of them fight sleep, tranquility, rest, and resignation to fate with such vigor. The negative intrusions of any degree of criticism or pessimism darkens a ram's eastern horizon and considerably dampens the Aries spirit, especially when the blow to innocent and sunrise faith is delivered forcefully from another ram. Yet temporarily, resentment seldom remains long enough to become permanent bitterness, because Aries possesses a childlike faith that a quarrel can somehow be made up. A relationship can be repaired each time it's broken. It's unthinkable to a ram that any given situation is anything but the way he or she sees it at that time. Nevertheless, no one, except Sagittarius and Gemini, can switch a mistaken viewpoint more swiftly or bury yesterday's unhappiness and hurt more completely than an Aries man, woman, or child who is handled gently. To a ram of either sex or any chronological age, barring a more pessimistic moon sign and or ascendant, each sunrise brings a new covenant of resurrection, the resurrection of a shattered dream, idea, goal, or friendship. Why look backward or worry about what's past and couldn't be helped when today is so full of promise? A few sentences back, you'll notice the phrase, "who is handled gently," in italics. The trouble is, although rams need to be handled gently themselves, they aren't inclined to handle each other, or anyone else, gently. Aries people can't seem to get the hang of the golden rule. They comprehend, even personify, is generosity and forgiveness, but they can't quite interpret what it means to treat others as tenderly as they need to be treated. They will not be led by the nose, pushed or forced by anyone, including those who are clearly stronger than they are, and certainly not by each other. A typical Aries person would literally stand before a criminal who pointed a loaded gun in his or her direction and fearlessly talk back. Rams expect their own wishes to be granted, their own orders obeyed without question as quickly or as possible, unless there's a softening influence of several Pisces or Libra planets in the horoscope. It's the instinctive Mars urge to rebel, the drive to initiate and to lead, is so strong in some Mars-ruled men, women, and children that even friendly suggestion is something construed as unbearable interference, let alone the forceful commands of a relative, neighbor, friend, business associate, mate, or lover born under the same unconsciously demanding sun sign. If one of the two Aries people is stronger by planetary positions at birth, not wiser and more patient, which would be beneficial, but stronger, the result of the association could be that the weaker ram gradually turns into a neurotic sheep, constantly and pathetically almost apologizing for his or her very existence, or else rationalizing every word and action. For fear of offending or being misunderstood, such situation is very sad, for to see the proud strength of a spirited astrological animal like the ram reduced to the weakness and tears, constantly attempting to placate the more dominant personality, yet inwardly frustrated and emotionally restricted, is against the first law of astrology. Be true to your own sun sign essence, or be prepared to lose the power individual potential of your own birthright. It's never easy for two rams to exist in tranquil harmony, although it can undeniably be exciting. One happy probability is that both of them will usually be inclined to forgive and forget everything but the most cruel encounters. As for the latter, a powerful effort should be made to avoid them, because they'll be long remembered by Aries, for the very same reason that infants who instantly forget with a trusting smile the more commonplace hurts and pains will recall with subconscious terror the deep experiences of traumatic rejection, sometimes forever. Two rams will have to try to control their tendency to lash out at one another. While their tempers are still hot, they'll strike a blow shortly afterward, feel a surge of guilt over their hasty unkindness, then impulsively attempt to make up for their anger by showering each other with an outburst of affection, or a peace offering of an extravagant gift. Now, gifts, by that way, are Ram's way of saying, I like you, or I love you. Occasionally given apologetically to say I'm sorry, but never is an Aries gift given for the purpose of buying friendship. The Mars-ruled are contemptuous of getting what they want or buying it. They're accustomed to demanding it. So they fiercely resent and are also very deeply hurt by such untrue insinuations or accusations. Aries gifts are always from the heart, given in a straightforward and honest gesture of goodwill. Nevertheless, their motives are often misunderstood by those who materialistically mind themselves to be able to comprehend given without some ulterior motive, since that's their own pattern or behavior. They believe everyone must be the same. Happily, this is another area of hurt two rams probably won't inflict upon one another. Each Aries person understands the gift-giving syndrome. That's part of the Mars nature, matched only by the other two fire signs, and therefore both will usually give and receive joyously, back and forth. A ram is delighted to receive a gift as to be able to give one. It's part of the wisdom of Aries innocence to know that it's of equal importance to graciously receive as to generously give, for if no one received happily, there could be no happy giving. Consequently, the typical ram will react with the elation of a child to the receiving of a surprise present, and two Arians can keep themselves broke, but exalted and happy, as a result of their mutual urge to express their enthusiasm through gifting. Down through the centuries, the ram has been a symbol of sacrifice for spiritually blind, emotionally warped, and mentally dense religious fanatics. The Old Testament is packed with bloody examples of the burnt offerings of these misguided holy men, who in no way was the patriarch Abraham following God's wishes or commands to first be willing to murder his own son to please the Almighty, and then to hear God's voice grant a last-minute reprieve commanding him to murder his helpless son, or helpless sheep in his place. Abraham sadly heard only the voice of his own delusion, not the voice of God. That's Miss Linda Goodman's opinion. To each their own. Let's continue on. Neither of our infinitely compassionate or wise co-creators could be so sadistic as to command the murder of children or of the lowliest of our animal brothers and sisters, for their own greater glory, as a senseless test of faith and obedience. The earth sorely needed the example set by the gentle Nazarene, Jesus, who used the sheep in parable after parable, illustrating love and kindness, who is often pictured embracing the lamb, and who brought the world to the image of God, of Good Shepherd, in his effort to strengthen out the kinks of the twisted thinking of these servants of God, for all their otherwise pious and humble attitudes. In such mythical legends as Jason and the Golden Fleece, the sad fate of the ram has been repeated all through mythology, as well as in biblical history. The unfortunate ram, who attempted to cross dangerous seas and rescue the brother and sister from the jealous act of a stepmother, in a great act of courage, was able to save the sister from drowning. When he reached the shore and delivered the brother safely, his thanks was to be murdered for allowing the other one to die, even though he had tried desperately to save her. That didn't make any sense. Let's continue on. Such is the symbolic fate in varying degrees in all kinds of endeavors of many Aries people. For all their enthusiastic efforts and the sincerity of their impulses, human rams frequently are either ignored or despised by the very ones that they tried to help. The Aryan simplicity of purpose and direct approach isn't always welcomed by more cynical of this world. Thomas Jefferson discovered this, as did modern-day Aries politician Eugene McCarthy. Nikita Khrushchev's personal motives were also, to a large extent, misunderstood and unappreciated both by his own people and by Americans. I don't know who that is. I better read up on my history. And so, the teaming up of the two Aryans can be beneficial, inasmuch as they're able to help each other avoid becoming a burnt offering, or being sacrificed to the calculating maneuvers of the more worldly wise, who would fleece them. They provide each other with protection against those who would otherwise take advantage of their altruistic instincts. There are always bullies who wait for a chance to attack the defenseless. Admittedly, it's difficult to image the feisty, fiery, and normally outspoken rams as defenseless. But in the final analysis, they are extremely vulnerable to those who would use their natural gilliness, I can't say that word, guilelessness, holy shit, and lack of sophistication against them. In any association between two Aries people within the family circle, in the office, or across the bridge of love and friendship, one thing is certain: emotions will periodically run high and close to the surface. Catalyst described perfectly the attitude of this sun sign to its own emotionally maturity when he wrote, "I hate and I love. You may ask why I do so. I do not know. But I feel it and am in torment. Between two rams, there will seldom be any deception, pretense, or hypocrisy, but neither will there be a great deal of caution, release, or practicality. There's very little that will be neutral in this one-on-one sun sign pattern vibration of the double Mars involvement. These two are capable of reaching the far heavens of happiness, or of consuming themselves in childish displays of rage, resentment, and thoughtless selfishness. Yet they will never fail to understand and sympathize with each other's bright red diamond-dusted dreams, especially those dreams that didn't quite make it, for one reason or another. Perhaps together they can both try again, and somehow, some way, someday, they'll win. Tough dreamers always do. Alright, Aries women and Aries men. This might sound misogynistic, okay? But this book was made a long time ago, so. So uproariously gay was the dance, and how they buffeted each other on the bed and out of it. It was a pillow fight rather than a dance, and when it was finished, the pillows insisted on one bout more. As fiercely independent, bright, and clever as the Aries girl is, the Aries man is even more so. In his own opinion, he'll demand recognition of it eventually, no matter how he fools her and himself in the beginning. From the very first time she pushes through that door ahead of him, he'll feel the faint stirring of a desire to teach her that, in any tangle between a girl and a boy ram, the male of the sun signs will win. He should decide to thus subdue her eagerly in the game, or say goodbye. There may be a few noisy, tearful skirmishes before she catches on, but she'll blossom beautifully when she's allowed, no, forced, to become a woman. However, demanding that she drop her career or job to take up the full-time job of waiting on his whims is not the most ideal way to unfold her womanhood and establish his manhood. There are other ways, unless she's willing to sacrifice her pre-them occupation to warm his slippers, or join him in his personal goals, forgetting her own, which sometimes happens. It's best for him to let her stay out there, where it's all happening. It would also be a wise mutual decision to let it be his income that pays for the rent and mortgage, food and utility bills. Her money can provide the extra things that they'll need to satisfy the extravagant impulses they both frequently feel. That way, the male, Aries, will be solidly entrenched in the image of the masculine side of the team, and it's important to get that straight right from the start. I mean, let it be plainly understood that he is a man and she is a woman. There will be lots of opportunities to wonder about the division of actual control in the relationship, and there's no sense adding to this by a confusion of sexual male-female roles. The masculinity challenge of the Mars female begins the day she first zings the male's ram of her choice in the heart with her own sparkling hopes and excitements, so much like his own, and will follow him through all sorts of living arrangements, including temporary geographical separation. She may try to dominate him by telephone, telegram, or letter, if he's not within touching distance. Since the Aries man knows that no one has successfully dominated him from the time he was born, he might feel like calling it quits when he feels the first tug of war from an Aries girl. But he'd be smarter to curb his annoyance and try to tame her instead. Every Aries woman has a deep hidden desire to be protected and defended by her man. In her private daydream, she is always the lovely, gentle Guinevere, and he is the kind, tender, strong Lancelot. Or he'd better be if he doesn't want his Guinevere to become a frustrated Virginia Woolf. Which is a very possible and most undesirable result when a man either leans too far backward with her in an attempt to please, or leans too far forward in an attempt to take charge. The former probably won't occur often, because leaning over backwards is not normal position or direction for the typical male ram. Leaning too far forward is more likely, but he should understand that her Guinevere wish to be conquered is purely romantic and sexual. It has little to do with, or nothing to do with, the personality or other areas of her life. His masculine Mars macho that keeps her starry-eyed and emotionally fulfilled on a stroll along the beach or in the privacy of the bedroom won't normally be welcome regardless activities separated from romance. She draws a sharp line between submitting romantically and submitting in other ways, and it's best for him to realize this if he wants to keep her. Expecting this lady to keep his curfews or follow his orders is unwise, but ignoring her is downright dangerous. He's capable of making all these mistakes until he learns she'll neither toe the line nor be brought to heel by the dictator treatment, because she's cut from the same mold as he, which is, of course, thrown away after the Aries sun sign was made. That's how Rams believe that the old saying got started. They threw away the mold when they made you, baby. They sure did. Actually, it refers to the ancient potter's mold, but it fits the Aries situation quite aptly. The first thing the Aries girl will notice about her male counterpart is that he's even more bossy, belligerent, and bellicose than she is, obviously, and also fortunately. If she's puzzled by the yin and yang of it, a brief meditation on her all-time favorite fairy story might cause her to experience the dawn of comprehension. This woman never failed to cry as a child when she read about the prince charging bravely into the woods to find his princess and awaken her from her lonely slumber with the kiss of true love. Now, Aries female invariably get all soft and squishy inside at the mere thought of true love, their idealism in affairs of the heart being as eternal as spring itself. But really now, dear Aries girl, when you're honest with yourself, would it have been quite so magical if the fairy courageous princess had come charging bravely into the woods on her horse to claim her prince and rescue him from the wicked witch? The same meditation should be practiced on all the other fairy tales that she still believes in and dreams of every fortnight or so. Imagine dainty Cinderella, red-faced, puffing, and perspiring as she tried to shove a glass hush puppy on her prince's foot to see if it fitted him. Mother Nature knows what she's doing. The Aries man-woman relationship will stand a better chance of success if she permits him to still her Mars thunder. It somehow sounds better coming from him, if he doesn't carry it too far. Besides, since she's no stranger to toughness herself, she knows very well if she'll stop to ponder it, that his tough Aries facade is only a cover for his quivering Aries idealism, his desperate inner longing to be needed and noticed. Alright, so she should notice him as he sits there astride his white horse, shooting off all that Aries bossiness in disguise, to disguise his secret fear that no one will ever love him as much as he knows that he needs to be loved, which is considerable, unless he demands it. This man can be very tender and gentle for all his brash independence, and he's an expert at pretending that he's not hurt when he's actually been deeply wounded. She knows how that is, since they're both aware of all these Mars secrets about each other. You'd think that they would cool the fireworks, but it usually takes more than one painful lesson to teach them the futility of constant ego challenges. Just often, the ultimate lesson is to frightening experience of nearly losing each other, then realizing at the last minute before the ultimate and final disaster, like the old silent film Perils of Pearline serial, that meeting force with force never works. If she'll do all her Mars charging at her man's enemies instead of at him, he'll adore her for it, and in return, he'll give her every bit as much loyalty as she gives him. That's certainly a fair trade. but somebody has to start it. It may seem at first that these two are well mated sexually, since they both require essentially the same thing of love. That it be the kind of physical emotional blending poets write about in these epitome of the soul mate theory, which nearly every Aryan believes in as absolute romantic dogma. Whether they use the term soulmate itself or not, Rams never doubt when they love that their union was not only made in heaven, but also made to last throughout a lifetime and beyond. However, before this potential peak of harmony becomes a reality, a serious obstacle must be overcome. The instinctive, although almost always unintentional, selfishness of the sun sign. Now, everybody wants to know about sex, whether whether he or she has been afraid to ask or not, is based on either deliberate or non-deliberate selfishness using the partner for self-gratification. Not how can I bring him or her more fulfillment, but how can I be more fulfilled? Sex, sex, sex. Doctors David Rubin, Masters and Johnson, Kinsey and Freud have all explained it, tested it, researched it, analyzed it, observed it, photographed it, taped it, listened to it, written about it. Just about everything but demonstrate it in public auditoriums. Too much competition from stage, films, and magazines, but most men and women still haven't received the message. It might be a good idea for these men, Mars lovers, to buy one of those large posters showing a couple walking blissfully hand in hand toward the mountains, the ocean, or the cornfield, gazing into each other's eyes, with some inscription at the bottom. Love begins when the need of someone else's becomes more important than your own. And nail it firmly near their bed, right next to the tapestry depicting the wedding of Romeo and Juliet, which always hangs in spirit, if not in actuality, on the wall of every Aries bedroom. Romeo and Juliet were also soulmates, you see, but they were unselfish. It's not necessary for the Aries man or woman to end their honeymoon with a double suicide scene in order to prove unselfishness. A little thoughtful consideration on both sides will suffice. When these traces of infantile selfishness have been erased by tenderness, the sexual sharing of love between these two can be ecstatic exchange. With Aries, sex is composed of strange contradictions, barely comprehended, causing their mating to be an incredible combination of explosive desire, direct and penetrating, fiery and uncontrolled, and haunting fragments of flowers in the rain, fresh breezes, and glittering snow diamonds. That's what happens when the powerful thrust of Mars is gentled by being expressed through the Nevite and starry wonder of the symbolic Aries infant. It creates a rare and startling blend of abandoned, stormy emotion and the peace of a still and silent dawn. At once primitive and poetic, the alchemy of equal parts of searing passion and fragile innocence is very nearly a holy thing. Obviously, then, at its very best, the sexual union between two rams can be an experience to cherish. Even at its worst, it will be interesting. What will she do if he flirts with other girls? Well, what would he do if she flirts with other men? Same thing. An emotional explosion of a hydraulic bomb magnitude, which is just as foolish and suicidal to love as the actual hydrogen bomb is to our planet. Each ram will let the other know unmistakably that iron bars and individual freedom will not be tolerated. But it's a one-sided freedom, since each of them refuses to be strangled by jealousy, while at the freedom same time displaying intense jealousy of the other. Aries people do tend to want to have their cake and eat it And it may take several noisy emotional scenes to teach them that they can't have it both ways. They'll have to learn that love's not a game to be won, a battle to be fought, or even a prize to be won. It's a gift to be given. Rams will demand a lot of things from life and get them, but no one, not even Aries, can demand love. He'll make it clear that she should not dare to be jealous of him, but she had better not even look at another man. She'll make it just as clear that he's not to smother her with jealousy, but at the same time he better not be caught glancing with the slightest flicker of interest in another woman. You know what that is? It's selfish. If you're an Aries, you may not just have thought about it like that, but think about it. Rams can even become jealous if they notice a smile on a loved one's face in sleep. Who is he or she dreaming about? And don't believe that very question hasn't come or been asked by lots of Aries couples in the morning. Well, you must have had a pleasant dream last night. Were you meeting your old boyfriend in your astral body? And don't think that answer hasn't been. It's none of your business what I dreamed. Besides, I noticed you weren't so anxious to wake up when I kissed you good morning just now. Were you lying there half awake practicing mental telepathy with that girl that you flirted with in the supermarket last week? God. Is this really what you guys think about? Now let's go on, I'm sorry. There are variations of dialogue, but such confrontations are a definite possibility when two Rams have promised to love, honor, and cherish, but never to obey. The solution is for these two to practice their own telepathic communication and to reassure each other of their undying devotion constantly, because the symbolic infant subconscious fear of losing love lies at the bottom of all Aries jealousy, incongruous as it may seem, as it struggles with the conscious Mars urge for personal independence. If he forgets to call to say he'll be later for dinner, who better than she should understand his need to follow a sudden impulse without first holding a committee meeting? Should the winds of April call him away from the hearth, she may be simultaneously called to follow her own skylark cadenza. And when they return to each other, they can exchange magical tales of the wonders that they nearly touched, the miracles that they almost caught. An Aries man who's out there rushing after some new exciting goal he just discovered is simply being true to himself, and the Aries woman who faces the truth must admit that she couldn't really love a man who wasn't true to himself. The new exciting goal needn't be a woman, not unless it became a woman through her unfolded jealousy. If she trusts him completely, she probably won't regret it, because an Aries man, more so than any other sun sign male, will usually live up to exactly what's expected of him. And that works in reverse too. What's sauce for the goose is surely sauce for the gander between these lovers. A couple of years ago, I received a letter from an Aries woman married to an Aries man. They have 3 children, 1 Gemini and 2 Taurines. She described so well the happiness that can result from a double one-on-one sun sign vibration with some effort that I'm going to quote part of her letter here. She wrote in part, "And when I read aloud the last paragraph of the Aries women section in your book, Sun Signs, to my also Aries husband, the part that says she may be a little impulsive, bossy, and independent, but you can't have everything," he asked, "What else would a man want?" My Aries husband understands me, and he'll always be able to hold me, even though I sometimes threaten to leave him when our ram horns clash. It's because of your book says, when I come running into his arms, my world all dark and dismal, he holds me close and comforts me, and would never, never say, "What did you do to deserve it?" Like that darned Libra man you wrote about in Sun Signs. I never realized before just how important that is to me. Oh, sorry. Let's continue on. I was just thinking, Libra man. I'm a Libra, so. So you see, an Aries relationship can work, and the two of them needn't sacrifice their Mars courage, initiative, or independence. The Aries woman who wrote that letter ended it with a postscript. I have a tremendous urge to tell you to add Ayn Rand to your list of prominent Aquarians. She fits it like a glove, but of course, you know I wouldn't sign off this letter without at least one suggestion on how to run your business. An Aries to the end she was, but a girl ram who's learned to admit her Mars need to take the lead and can laugh about it instead of either denying it or being ashamed of it, has learned an important lesson. You must love yourself, which requires both honesty and humor, before anyone else can love you. I'm sorry to say I've lost that Lady Ram's name and address since I typed out the excerpt from her letter, and if she reads this, I hope she writes again so I can answer a vital question she asked. If the Aries man and his Aries woman each practice the golden rule and do unto one another as they would have the other do unto them, assuming their mutual sun sign aspects are not discorded, their relationship will bring in them both the reward of emotional maturity plus the best of all possible gifts, the freedom to be completely themselves with one another with no fear of rejection. Then when they quarrel, they may threaten to leave her, or he may threaten to leave her in the heat of the moment, but he probably won't. Not for keeps anyway. Once he's loved an Aries woman, all other girls will seem boring. Restful, perhaps, by comparison, but boring. She feels the same way about him when she threatens to leave and doesn't mean it. But she should try to remember that he can chop wood, blast through granite mountains, pilot planes, build houses, govern a city, state, or nation, change tires, practice medicine or law, produce and direct films, operate a tractor, and shovel snow, at least as well as she can. It may no longer be true that a woman's place is in the home, but it will be eternally true that a woman's place is inside her man's heart. All right. That was Linda Goodman's love sign, Aries versus Aries. It was really long, sorry. I had to dim my voice so that I could cough without you guys going deaf. I hope that you learned as much as I learned. I learned a lot from you. And you're a sun sign. You guys have a wonderful night. Stay safe. I love you all. Bye-bye, my